India is leading the charge when it comes to global capability centers or GCCs. So much so that today almost half of all GCCs in the world are in India. What does a global capability center do? Well, a global capability center is an offshore unit of a multinational company established to perform supporting functions such as technology development, human resources, finance or research and development. Ever since Texas Instruments set up their first GCC or Global Capability Center in India back in 1985 to support their United States operations, GCC have grown leaps and bounds. According to a latest NASSCOM Strategic review of 2024, India hosts more than 1,600 GCCs in the country, almost 100 centers of excellence across verticals, providing employment to over 7.45 lakh people. Now, global capability centers are also leading the charge when it comes to diversity in workforce, with almost 28% women in workforce in GCCs, according to the new report. In fact, a Deloitte GCC value proposition says that as and when a GCC grows, it has a cascading multiplier effect, a 3x on revenue and a 5x multiplier effect on job creation. India therefore needs more GCCs. And how do we get there? Let's talk about that. Sangeeta Gupta, Senior VP NASSCOM, joining us here on the show. With me is my senior colleague Rakesh Khar. I want to come to you, Sangeeta, first. A lot of people don't really understand fundamentally what a GCC is. We are, as a country, accruing benefits of GCC. Tell us what's been the trajectory so far.
For inviting me, and it's a great topic that you looked at for the conversation today. So very clearly, GCCs or Global Capability Centers, as NASSCOM calls them, are units of companies that are not traditionally in the business of technology, right? So these could be big banks, these could be big healthcare companies, the big automotive companies, the big telecom companies, who are doing part of the technology and operations internally, but now have set up large presence in India to be able to do it much more efficiently, innovatively, and value add to the parent organization.
All right, and if you could give us some examples of big GCCs as we kick off this conversation.
So I think if you think of any of the big banks, right, a JP Morgan, an HSBC, a NatWest Bank, Barclays, so all the big banks are in India. If you look at all the automotive companies, right, a Daimler, a Ford, Renault, Nissan, Continental Tires, and the work they do, they all have large GCC presence in India. If you think about the retail organizations, a Walmart, a Tesco, a Target, and even some of the newer ones that are coming in are like all have a significant footprint in India. All the professional services companies, right, McKinsey, Bain, BCG, Deloitte, everybody has a capability center in India today.
Right. So come to think of it, Rakesh, from automobile to banks to, you name it, GCCs are growing leaps and bounds in almost every non-IT sector. Just before we started the show, you said GCC became a story for you the moment India started exporting more in services as opposed to goods. Why is GCC such an important story for India's growth?
Absolutely. Shweta, we've been looking at the IT success story in India and we've been very happy about it, but with not much differentiation over the last 3 and 4 decades. It's doing well, but we haven't been able to carve out a differentiation. So GCC comes in as a differentiation. It's a new business paradigm, as our esteemed guest pointed out. This is a differentiation both in terms of the output on the ROI and also in terms of understanding the business paradigm. So how is it different from a traditional IT company? As you rightly articulated in your opening remarks, it does not just purely look at only the IT pack. It looks at a whole lot of services, essentially research, business, acquisitions, customer acquisitions, and other core functions in a company. And the spread now today, Shweta, is that I think there isn't a sector which is not represented by GCCs in India. And numbers, I think, there are varying numbers from what you mentioned. One estimate puts it at about 1,800 GCCs in India, spread essentially about 6 to 8 metros, which is, the core big cities. And the employment number stands at 1.6 million. So it is, and look at the projections now. Why GCC is so big? It's so big because the projection is about $46 billion worth in India right now. It's estimated to go about $110 billion on a modest estimate by independent business consulting firms by 2030. and the number of GCC centers in India would cross about 2,500 by then.
All right.
And the employment would be about 5 million.
Okay.
So that's a large number. How is it different from a traditional center? Also needs to be explained further. It is different because it is a captive in-house service of a multinational company which may not be represented directly in India. And it is not the origin of GCC is not only in India but globally came into being because of the cost advantage. One, India offers a huge cost advantage. Second, the paradigm.
A skilled, low-paid workforce.
That's right. That's the essential base. On that base, how would a GCC be more cost efficient than the same piece of business going to a TCS and Infosys? That's what we need to understand. I think there the cost advantage is far bigger here, and it's captive. It's called GIC also, Global In-House Centers, and they are called GCs also, Global Captives. So they are captive, controlled, and are, so to say, reduced from the external imponderables, which make it far more successful. So that's the outlook. The outlook looks very bright, but there are challenges, Shweta.
I want to come to you, for challenges. Rakesh, let's also quickly go back to
Absolutely.
Sangeeta. Sangeeta, now, obviously, the ground lays for India to become one of the biggest GCC players. Almost half of GCC centers in the world currently operate in India. What, according to you, are the existing challenges? India has a cost advantage. It has a labor workforce that is ready to participate in whatever comes by the way of either manufacturing or providing services for. What are, according to you, some of the loopholes or lacunas that India needs to plug?
I would say, some of the advantages are also potential challenges as we look at it. Clearly, talent is a big opportunity that India has given our young demographics. But as we scale up in new technology areas, access to technology is talent in technology areas like AI, data analytics, cybersecurity, blockchain. I think that can also be a challenge for GCCs as well as other service providers. But it's very important that India continues its efforts on upskilling, reskilling, changing the education system, and making sure as GCCs look to expand their talent pool, they're able to find the right kind of talent they need, not the numbers exist, but how do you find the right talent that exists? I think the second is a few issues on the regulatory side, which is really everything around the transfer pricing norms for GCCs in the country, the ability to enter into advanced pricing agreements, tax certainty. I think that is one area that NASSCOM has made a lot of recommendations on to the government, and there's a lot of willingness to see and address some of these concerns. But I would say that's the second part of it. I think the third is really as again, as India will move up the value chain for these GCCs and look to maybe build out more advanced R&D services and solutions from India. How is the R&D ecosystem in India more mature, right? Do you have access to the next test beds for, if it's 6G, autonomous driving, medical devices, equipment? So as we are talking of this trajectory from 46 billion to 100 billion, you also have to think about what are the enabling factors that the country has to put into place so that India can be on that journey to accelerate its growth from the current 46 billion to the 100 billion mark.
All right, Rakesh, would you like to add to some of them?
Well, yeah.
And also, just to put this also into perspective from my understanding as a young person who understands GCC to the point where a lot of naysayers that I have been talking to recently who do not really agree with India being pushed to become a manufacturing economy says that GCCs is where we should focus. We hope to become a services-driven economy. We may have missed the bus on manufacturing, but services is where the focus should be next.
Well, I think there's no either or situation that we can afford,
Okay.
Shweta, as of now. We need both manufacturing to kick in a very big way. That's what we were discussing yesterday when we talked about the Nomura report. Unless and until the manufacturing kicks in an equally big manner, we are a services-led economy. I think that debate is settled that we need both. And we need both to drive, in the same trajectory. But GCC has given that facelift to the service export segment. And I agree with the NASSCOM perspective that we need to clear the regulatory framework to make it a little more attractive for people to come in here. But Government of India is extremely keen that the service export bucket grows bigger and bigger. And for that, if it needs to clear the air when it comes to the framework of the transfer pricing, that's where the business model rests, then I think they would be keen to try and help the multinational companies who are setting up base here. But there are two very interesting challenges which I want to add to what she said. One is that the attrition rate is higher, whereas the hiring induction is higher than the normal IT pack.
Okay.
I don't know what the reason is. Probably one of the reasons is that, you know, when you work for an Infosys or a TCS or a Cognizant, you would represent a brand which is a household name. India is a very socially active economy. The socio-economic paradigm also works very prominently when you choose a company to work for. You know, but the slowdown has affected the IT pack not as much as GCC has been affected. The hiring ratios are higher than the IT pack, but attrition rate is higher than the traditional IT pack. So that's one challenge we need to mitigate. Second big challenge is that, you know, again the same concentration of these centers in 4 or 6 big metros. So if India is the capital of GCCs, Bangalore is the capital of GCCs in India.
Okay.
So it's a typical format which we need to reverse if we really want to sustain the cost advantage. We'll have to build capabilities outside of these 6 cities. I'm not averse to them, you know, being the hub, but we'll have to simultaneously not defer the process of bringing in other, you know, tier 2, tier 3 cities to come into play and make it happen. The other big challenge is that the skill set that she rightly pointed out. We need to, if we really have to expand and grow up the value chain, then pure play IT and research has to kick in. For research, you really need specialized understanding. And then research is led by the AI and MI model. That again is a deficit area in India as of now. We need to bring back AI and these new emerging technologies as part of the curriculum, both at the, you know, I would say bring them at the school level. That's the way China is going about it.
Right, absolutely. And it's important that you brought about skill into this picture because, you know, I recently had the good fortune of speaking to Micron, and one of the challenges that they also brought to fore was there is not enough skilled workforce, at least workforce that is into R&D, that has enough understanding of AI, ML at schooling level, at college level. So skilling also, you know, lack of enough skilled labor also continues to be a problem, Rakesh.
Especially if it's a highly specialized domain.
Absolutely.
You know, if say, you know, the companies that we mentioned, there's an interesting list that I was looking at, AstraZeneca for instance. The Google Pay equivalent or RuPay equivalent in Japan is all almost acting, you know, wholly from a Bangalore GCC. Similarly, in retail, she mentioned most of the companies. There is a US company, which is also very big. One of the biggest, you know, GCC centers for the retail giant is in Bangalore. So we need to ensure that if we have to sustain this model, we need to look at the P&L, the business case. For that, the regulatory framework has to improve. Second, the cost of operation has to reduce. And second, to make the workforce, which is the backbone, really kick ass in the international competitive arena, arm them with the AI and the modern technology zones.
All right. Before I let you go, Sangeeta, you know, could you perhaps also share some more highlights from your strategic review of where GCCs are headed, and also spend a minute about talking of the workforce? Is India as a workforce ready to take on the mantle, the challenge of becoming the next global hub when it comes to it? It is already leading when it comes to GCCs, but you need more specialized workforce, you need more skilled labor. Are we getting there just as yet?
No, I think thank you for raising that point, and I just want to briefly react to Rakesh's point on attrition being higher in GCCs. I'm not as confident that that is really a big trend, because attrition is almost similar. It depends on how companies measure it. The big services companies don't measure interns and, you know, the fresher hiring, and hence you may see some differences. But as an industry body, we have not seen attrition being higher in GCCs, and I just wanted to put that on record. But I think to address the question around what more can India do to enhance its reputation and global visibility in the whole, you know, GCC space. I think clearly focus on talent, as I mentioned earlier, has to be our number one driver, right? We cannot take it for granted. Yes, we have a very young population. Technology is a very preferred career among the youth in the country. We have almost 5.5 million people working in technology and operations in India. So there's lots of capacity, capability, domain expertise already built in. But how do you make sure that, you know, all the changes that are taking place with emerging technologies are feeding down to the schools, colleges of India, and not just as another AI course, but experiential learning that's coming.
Right.
So the whole culture of hackathons, building out use cases that are getting commercialized, more internships, more apprenticeship programs. I think we need to fundamentally rethink hiring as well as education in India from a future forward perspective. But I think just to summarize, I think GCCs have been a growth driver for India, and I think particularly in 2023 when the overall industry did have a slowdown in growth. And I think just as NASSCOM, the number of new GCCs that we see, the number of people that we are hosting on a regular basis who want to come set up in India, we've never seen that kind of movement earlier. So it is the time for GCCs in many ways, and you'll continue to hear more about that.
And just before I let you, I want to pick your brains on the diversity in workforce. That data has come out today, 28% women when it comes to GCCs. That is better than other industries, many other markers. What is leading to this diversity? How are GCCs any different with hiring women as compared to other industries?
It's been done through very strategic steps. It's not something that's happened on its own. It's a regular process where GCCs and many services companies, right, have very, very established DEI practices. And these are not just practices on paper, they have metrics for measurement. How many women are entering at a entry level, how many at a middle level, senior level, what are the retention rates for these women, gender pay parity, how is that moving, what is the mentorship, allyship, training programs we are providing to retain the women in the workforce, what are the women returnship programs that we can drive, and of course, even how many women role models we are seeing in GCC. So as NASSCOM, I think we see a lot of women leaders in the GCC world who are not just leading India, but potentially some of the global roles out of India.
Absolutely. Yes, Rakesh.
No, I think that's brilliant. The years ago, I just by gut said that, there are more women employed in across sectors in the BFSI sector. And then when I looked at the data, the IT sector had more women across categories than the BFSI sector. So I was happy to be corrected on that count. Now I'm even more happier that, in the GCC segment, there are more women. I wish they take the leadership role and, it should be women-led development in terms of the skill set. And
just by the virtue of experience, where is media when it comes to diversity in workforce?
Lots of work to cover.